Beyond Netero is the son of the late chairman Isaac Netero, and the individual who is, at the core, responsible for almost every single event that has happened during the Dark Continent and Succession War arcs. However, his story begins long before any of this. An unknown number of decades ago, because dude is really old, Isaac Netero traveled to the Dark Continent on 2 occasions, a location that went on to captivate his son Beyond, who 50 years ago, because Beyond is also old, followed in his father's footsteps and was hired to lead his own expedition by the Kukanyu Kingdom. However, Beyond Netero ignored all of the warnings his father had given him and insisted on taking an unexplored route. This led his expedition team to the calamity Zobai, the immortality disease, which claimed all but 7 lives. Beyond was fortunate enough to survive, however, this disaster did not deter him. If anything, it only made him more excited to go back. However, Isaac Netero predicted that the impact his son's recklessness would have on humanity was unacceptable and successfully lobbied the V5 nations to ban all travel to the Dark Continent, primarily in order to remove any avenue of access that Beyond Netero would have. This is known as the Inviolability Treaty, and it was designed so that each of the 5 powers wouldn't do something like go off on their own and put each of the others in jeopardy. And each and every single V5 nation ignored it, going on to conduct their own secret voyages because that's politics. All of those voyages failed, brought back new calamities to the human realm, and then and only then did the V5 actually begin taking this treaty seriously. But in addition to this framework, Isaac Netero personally forbade his son to go back to the Dark Continent until after he had died. An event that came to fruition during the Chimera Ant arc, where Chairman Netero gave his life to kill the Ant King Meruem, thus fulfilling Beyond's condition, who wasted no time in implementing a new voyage to the Dark Continent. As a side note, it's also heavily speculated that Beyond Netero was the one responsible for causing the Chimera Ant outbreak, that the ants were a calamity that he had brought back with him from his voyage, and released in the one part of the human realm that would allow them to rapidly grow into a force capable of killing his father, so that Beyond could finally conduct a new expedition to the Dark Continent, something that he'd already been planning for the past 5 decades at that point, which was all very necessary time. Remember, going to the Dark Continent is the goal that Jing Freaks has been working towards his whole life, and he's barely gotten anywhere trying to implement it. According to Jing Freaks, you need 4 things to access the Dark Continent: the qualifications, the means, permission, and a contract. Now, Beyond already comes equipped with qualifications because he's been to the Dark Continent before. He also has the knowledge of his father's previous journeys, although he will actively choose to ignore that, but still, that's 1 tick. However, attaining the means, aka the finances, the people, the transport, and the equipment, is something that no single hunter could achieve on their own. Hence why Beyond Netero has spent an exceptional amount of time ideologically seducing King Nasabi of the Karkian Empire, one of the wealthiest nations on the planet, and very conveniently, a nation that is not associated with the V5. Beyond told stories to King Nasabi about the vast territory, the resources, and the riches awaiting anyone willing to colonize the Dark Continent, which Nasabi was very eager to take advantage of and solidify his place as a historic hero of the Karkian Empire, essentially granting it a second explosion of life. What Beyond likely neglected to tell King Nasabi, however, was about the extreme dangers of even attempting to sail there, much less the certain death that awaited them simply setting foot on the mainland. However, ultimately that probably doesn't matter, because King Nasabi isn't a fool being taken for a ride here. His personal agenda very much aligns with that of Beyond Netero, and he has his own extremely sinister reasons for wanting to conduct a voyage to the Dark Continent, being the Succession Contest, a life or death Nen battle royale, which we'll go into detail about at a different time. But what I will say is that Nasabi, he has very few worries about the Dark Continent, because the results of this contest should theoretically ensure the Empire's safety. And with this, Beyond had succeeded in attaining the means for the voyage, which culminated in the construction of the Black Whale 1, a colonization vessel equipped to carry 200,000 passengers, almost all of whom were to be selected by lottery, with the exception of some very special people like the Karkian royal family who got to avoid that system. Although as it turns out, the lucky ones were the people who weren't selected. You really don't want to be aboard the ship, for so many reasons. But that's 2 ticks for Beyond: qualifications and the means. However, what he still needed was permission and a contract, the former of which was achieved almost laughably easily. Beyond Netero's personality has been noted by the Zodiacs as being practically identical to his father's, especially in the field of charisma. So much so that upon hearing Beyond Netero speak, each of the Zodiacs were left in stunned silence, because it was as if Isaac Netero had been reincarnated before their eyes, which I wouldn't blame anyone for actually thinking, because reincarnation was a big part of the Chimera Ant arc events. But this means that regardless of his Nen affinity, Beyond Netero is an extraordinarily skilled manipulator. So what he did was schedule a global livestream with King Nasabi to announce their intentions to travel to the Dark Continent. And during that stream, he gave the following speech: "No matter how many obstacles stand in the path path to our goal, I promise I will remove them. Age, gender, nationality, employment, race, none of it matters. Everyone deserves an equal opportunity. I will turn down no challenger. Anyone who wants to win this new land is my family. Each person will have a role to play. All you need is the courage to step forward. Come one, come all. Let us go to the new world. This speech was then uploaded to iTube and got over 100 million views in an hour. So Beyond Netero was pulling in numbers that would make even Mr. Beast jealous. And what this accomplished was lighting a fire across the world. Not only did Beyond reveal the existence of the Dark Continent to the vast majority of the planet who had no idea there was an outside world, but he also made it sound like a wildly appealing place to explore. Again, selectively omitting the key dangers. But this put the V5 nations in a very difficult position, as the Kakian Empire were going to set sail with or without their permission, which obviously puts all of humanity at risk, with the only way to really stop them being to declare war, which was a strongly considered option, as according to clauses 7 to 9 of the UN Basic Relations Treaty, military intervention is permitted in the case of any perceived threat involving contagious biological hazards and unknown menaces. Unknown menaces describing the Dark Continent calamities quite well. However, the V5 ended up selecting a much more peaceful yet much more greedy option. Remember, I previously said that each of these 5 countries have violated their own treaty to travel to the Dark Continent on at least one occasion, all of which were driven by greed. And now they've come together, unified by their greed, so here's the plan. The V5 invited the Kakian Empire into their organization and officially became the V6. Then together they would pool their resources to conduct the first official successful Dark Continent voyage and split the rewards between the 6 nations. That was the public position. The private position was that the V5 made a secret plan to dump the Kakian Empire on a landmass known as the New Continent and pretend it was the Dark Continent before moving on to explore the real Dark Continent themselves. And on this occasion, Togashi has perfectly depicted the hubris of humanity, because the V5 aren't trying to prevent Dark Continent access to save humans. They're just trying to make sure that they're the ones that end up with all the rewards. And all of this was foreseen and taken into account by Beyond Netero, because his speech triggered a lot of pressure from business leaders and assorted political donors to explore this option, thanks to all of the wild promises of the untold discoveries and therefore newfound profit. Speaking of, it's also worth noting that Beyond Netero also has a public and private position on this matter. What I quoted before, that wonderful speech about equity and opportunity, that was Beyond's public opinion. But now here's the speech that he gave to his personal expedition team in private. I want to go where no one has gone before. Meet people nobody has met. Acquire things nobody has touched. I want to explore without bounds in the great wide opening, leaving my mark on virgin territory. I won't turn down anyone who joins or chase after anyone who leaves, but I'll crush anyone who tries to interfere. And there you can see the stark contrast between the man who Beyond projects himself as versus the man that he actually is. In his public speech, it was all about we and us and how I, Beyond, will protect you, the we. But in private, it's all about I and me and how you will be crushed if you get in my way, which is pretty much the exact sentiment of Beyond's late father. Something very key about Isaac Netero is that he was an incredibly selfish individual whose selfish goals usually just happened to align with what was best for humanity, such as sacrificing himself to kill the Ant King Meruem. Netero didn't do that entirely out of the goodness of his heart. He did so for the opportunity to finally face a worthy opponent. And Netero's leadership is what molded the Hunter Association, and specifically the Hunter Exam, into a trial designed to cultivate the strong and cull the weak, so that the strong could go on to grow, and again, eventually give Netero that challenge he was looking for, which you can see with the Zodiacs, who are handpicked for their unique abilities to challenge Netero in their respective fields. All of this is to say, imagine that selfishness, but geared in the exact opposite direction. Isaac Netero's desires may have aligned with humanity's prosperity, however, Beyond Netero's desires threaten to destroy the entire human race. And I think the key difference between them can be quite starkly drawn with the Dark Continent. Isaac Netero saw no personal value there for himself. There was no single challenge that he could defeat, so he lobbied to ban Dark Continent travel, thus preserving the safety of the human world and the cultivation of his little changelings. However, Beyond sees great personal value in the Dark Continent, so he concocted a plan to breach that safety and put existence as we know it into risk. Although in the end, they're both as bad as each other, because Isaac Netero hasn't exactly helped our current situation. In fact, he's the reason why every top member of the Hunter Association is now involved in this expedition, because he left a very special DVD to be played in the event that someone just popped out of nowhere and claimed to be his son. And on that DVD, Isaac Netero explained Beyond's motives, as well as their history, and finally gave the Zodiacs a single request, which was to successfully explore the Dark Continent before Beyond Netero. And I'd like to point out that Isaac Netero refers to this as not an order, it's a selfish desire of mine, which I obviously agree with, because it would seem that Netero Netero is only willing to put humanity at risk after he's been removed from it. After he dies, do whatever. In fact, you know what? Help me out here and allow me to defeat my son one last time from beyond the grave. It's even been suspected by Mizaistom that Isaac Netero made his death the condition in order to inspire Beyond to try and take his life, to cultivate his own son into that ultimate challenge that Isaac Netero had been seeking. That's just how the Netero family are, pretty relentlessly selfish. Now, most of the remaining Zodiacs were Netero loyalists, and they do want to complete this last will for him. However, the Hunter Association was in a pretty tough spot regardless, because the decision was very much out of their hands at this point. To bring economics into it, the V5 are the Hunter Association's biggest customers. So if the V5 make a decision to travel to the Dark Continent, then they'll be expecting the Hunter Association to comply. And so they did, with the Hunter Association now in charge of expedition transport and security. So in addition to gaining permission from the V5 nations, Beyond Netero also acquired significantly more means and qualifications for the journey. Although rather shockingly, Beyond Netero then turned himself into the Hunter Association and was promptly arrested, because after his announcement, the V5 nations requested that the Hunter Association hunt him because they needed him under their control in order to enact their Karkin plan, swiftly reaching an agreement where the Hunter Association and the V5 will supervise a Dark Continent expedition with Beyond under their strict control. So to clarify, the reason why we're taking Beyond at all, despite knowing how dangerous he is because one, even though he is going to 100% try to betray them, he is still the best guide we have. And two, because they need Beyond Netero's cooperation to fool the Karkin Empire. When they get to the new continent and drop them off, they essentially need Beyond to say, yep, this is the Dark Continent, this is the place I was talking about, enjoy. And as part of this deal, Beyond even signed a contract to remain in the custody of the Hunter Association, thus technically fulfilling all 4 Dark Continent travel requirements. However, on the side, Beyond Netero has already formed his own expedition team with his escape plan already in motion. And this team is primarily composed of temp hunters with specialized nen abilities necessary for survival. And these guys, some of them look kind of funny, but they are no joke. Do not underestimate them because they're temp hunters. Because Jing Freaks himself has ascertained that each and every one of them is a nen expert. In fact, this group is likely capable of power that would rival the entirety of the Zodiacs. And also, we should talk about that. Jing is here, in addition to some other familiar faces. For one, it was confirmed that Sayu of the Zodiacs is actually a traitor and working for Beyond Netero. However, Beyond himself doesn't know this, and that's because Sayu is working with former Zodiac Pariston Hill, who is something of a vice commander of this expedition team, and it was revealed that his whole time at the Hunter Association was spent purely setting up for this voyage, recruiting hunters with necessary abilities, gathering power, and eventually resigning from the chairman role to enact the plan. And then, of course, there's a third Zodiac in the mix as well, or in this case, former Zodiac Jing Freaks, who also resigned. Sensing an opportunity to make his ambition come to reality, he then gate crashed Beyond's expedition team, causing a lot of tension with Pariston. Also, quite funnily, Beyond has no idea about anything that Jing's been doing, because he's currently in prison and will be theoretically for the duration of the voyage. As it is, Beyond is currently lying down quite comfortably in a cell guarded by 3 Zodiacs at all times, being ferried to the Dark Continent quite literally without him needing to lift even a single finger. However, Beyond does have an escape plan that will commence at some point, and also an unknown number of extra expedition members, because Beyond's agents have also infiltrated the security of the Karkin royalty, such as Bill, who is currently guarding 14th Prince Woba with Karapika. However, all of them have since become embroiled in the deadly succession contest, with the very concept of their survival now in extreme doubt before even setting foot on the Dark Continent.